Hey, what's going on? You're now tuned in to the PVD Horror Podcast. I'm Brandon, and on today's episode, we have a special guest. We have Alan Robert, the award-winning author, illustrator, and musician. He is known as the king of the horror coloring books. Alan, thanks for coming on the show.
That's some intro. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. So Alan, you grew up a big horror fan. I love hearing how our guests talk about their first experience with horror and how it affected them at an early age. Can you share your experience with us?
Yeah, actually, I was traumatized by Amityville Horror as a little kid because I had begged my parents to watch it as I was probably 8 years old or seven. And I was like, please, it's an R-rated movie, but I really want to see it. And they finally gave in to me, and it was on HBO at the time when people first got HBO.
Hmm.
And and it came on, and the opening credits came on, and you had all like the chants, all that stuff. And I was like, I'm out of here. And I ran into my bedroom, but those old Brooklyn walls, man, they were very thin. And
Hmm.
I listened to the whole movie through the wall, which was probably more scary than the actual film, but because
Yeah.
my imagination went wild.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, I was hooked on horror films, and and I just love them. I grew up on films like The Shining and
Okay.
the original Evil Dead and the Chainsaw Massacres. I really like psychological horror. That's probably my favorite.
Okay. Yeah, that's they definitely have taken over the few years now that they have been releasing more heavy hitter films like that. But what are some of your favorite, if you had a top list of like three films, what of all time, what would they be for horror?
Definitely The Shining would be
Okay.
number one. Like I said, Evil Dead 2, because I
Mm.
really like the comedy element to that, and Chainsaw Massacre 2, probably.
Massacre 2. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
classic right there,
yeah.
man.
And it was very cool. Like, I play in a band called Life of Agony, and
Yep.
we played the Whiskey in LA, and Caroline Williams was there as a fan of the band, and we got to meet her. And
Mm.
she was such a big part of Chainsaw Massacre too, and the whole Leatherface legacy.
Yep.
So that was a very cool moment.
That's like the same thing. My son, he's a big fan of the sequel as well because the first one, I know they were scared. My kids had watched it when they were younger, but when they seen the second one was kind of like of a comedy, you know what I mean? And with Bill Moseley, my son was just like he fell in love with Chop Top. So
Yeah, yeah. That's my favorite shit right there.
there you go. So we had a lot of new releases. Are there any big releases that you're a fan of that have come out recently?
Like new films.
Yeah,
Um, let's see. I saw the prequel to Rosemary's Baby. What was that? Apartment 7A.
7A. Yep.
I like that. I took my daughter. My daughter's getting into horror movies now.
Okay.
She's 16 years old. She started on Stranger Things and went down the dark path of horror movies. Now,
Yep.
uh, I've been trying to show her the old school stuff, and so we saw Longlegs in the theater,
Yeah.
and she loved it so much she went back with her friends. So
Yeah.
she that was a good one. And I think those are the two most recent ones.
Okay.
Yeah, that stick to my mind.
No, that's cool. I had taken my daughter to see Long Legs also, and it was funny because her birthday actually falls on March 16th. She's like, Dad, why would you take me to see this?
Oh,
I'm
that's
like,
perfect though.
I'm sorry, but she's a big horror fan though, so she got over it.
Yeah, we also saw Barbarian in the theater, and
Yeah,
that was a cool movie to see in the theater.
yeah. For everyone listening, like you had said, if they're not into metal music, you're also an accomplished musician and lyricist. Can you talk a little bit about your band, Life of Agony, and how it all began?
Yeah, sure. We've been around over 30 years now.
Mm,
We started in 1989 in Brooklyn, New York, and we got a record deal in like 1992. We put our first record out in 93 called River Runs Red. And all throughout the 90s, we toured with the biggest names in
mm.
metal and rock, including we did shows with Metallica and Iron Maiden and even pop stars like David Bowie over the years.
That's sick.
So we really got to meet a lot of our heroes, growing up, and we're still very active today. We just actually put out a new song, a tribute to Brandon Lee
Mm,
and the original Crow film. It's called The Crow, and we did a video for it. We actually filmed it in a rain studio, so we played in the rain.
that's sick.
A big homage to the original film.
Mm,
And we put out a documentary in the last year or so called The Sound of Scars, and it kind of dives into the relationships within the band and kind of the motivation and um, our deep rooted connection with our fans, because the music is about real life stories and emotional trauma, not horror trauma, but
yeah.
real life, domestic abuse and
Hmm.
alcoholism and things like that. And so the film gets very deep, and we've been presenting it throughout Europe, um, showing the film, doing a Q&A with the fans, and then breaking it down and playing a full acoustic set, something we've never done before in
Hmm.
30 years. It's usually the loud rock concert,
Yep.
but we really take it down to an intimate setting, and it's really been special. We're doing another tour like that in December.
That's cool, because definitely for, for the fans over the years to get something special like that from you guys, to kind of like change the game a little bit. Um, that's awesome, so
Yeah, and we grew up in the 90s, so like
hmm.
the whole MTV Unplugged thing they used to do
Yeah,
with bands like Nirvana or Soundgarden. We love that stuff. So yeah, it's kind of like a tip of hat to that kind of vibe.
that's awesome. And then for like, when you guys first released your album, Rolling Stone had dubbed you guys as one of the greatest metal album bands of all time. How was that to have, when you first released?
Yeah, that didn't come till later, I guess. I think that when we came out in the early 90s, a lot of people didn't know what to make of us. In fact,
Hmm.
they didn't, because we kind of mixed metal music, hardcore music, and with a lot of melody, and they didn't really know where to put us, because at
Hmm.
that time it was either you were a thrash band or you were like a Nirvana, and we fell somewhere in the middle there. And we would tour around with bands that really didn't sound like us, like death metal bands like Carcass or
Hmm.
they always put us on these bills that we just did the best we could, and we just wanted to play in front of people. And eventually we just built our own fan base. And it wasn't until many years later where Rolling Stone included us in that list, and it was just a huge honor.
Yeah. Now it's been cool over the years, how, rock and metal and everybody and hip hop were able to merge. I remember when I was younger, Ice Cube did a big tour that merged hip hop and metal and everything together. And so just growing up and then seeing like, Jay-Z and Linkin Park, all these collaborations come. And so, like I try to tell my kids, like open your ears, listen to all different types of music. Don't listen to just one style because you can get bored. You know what I mean? There's so many things out there and lyrics, that can kind of like guide you through life. And that's how it was, like you said, with MTV Unplugged and stuff like that. It's definitely we're missing that today, because it's
Here
just
here in America, I would say, yeah, but
yeah,
in Europe, like they always mix up the bills. Like we've played with Ice Cube, we played
yeah.
with Cypress Hill, we've we've
Hmm.
we've done dates in the past with the Fugees,
Yeah.
and 50 Cent. So like things are maybe a little bit more open minded in Europe. Um, Over here, it's more like you go to a rock concert or you go to a hip hop concert. It's like
Mm.
they don't mix them up so much.
Yeah. That's crazy. So now you studied cartooning under the legendary Thor comic writer artist Walt Simpson, while attending the School of Visual Arts in New York. What was that experience like for you?
Hey, it was probably my favorite class because I
Mm.
got to draw actual comics from scripts that were being made into comics
Mm.
in real time. So Walt Simonson actually worked in the industry while he was teaching that class. So we would get uh, for homework. scripts from Marvel Comics that he was working on, adapting into panel art for
Mm,
interiors of comics. And that was our homework. We would take the same script that he was working on and interpret it and try and make a visual story out of it. And we would see what he was able to do with that script in comparison. And it was just a great storytelling class. And a lot of times he would bring in other working comic book artists that he was friendly with. So we got to meet so many of the greats in New York City. It was kind of a mecca of great talent and very eye opening. And I think I took that in my third and fourth year at School of Visual Arts, and it really set me up
okay.
to want to take my portfolio around to comic book companies and try and get a job in comics at that time. And it just so happens that it was 1993, the same year that we put out our first album, Life of Agony. And so I had to make a decision. Should I go into comics? Should I try this band thing, see what happens? And I said, you know what? This band thing will probably be over in 6 months. I'll just get it out of my system and that'll be that. And then I'll get a job in comics. And here we are over 30 years later. But along the way, I had some stories that I wrote back in college
Mm,
that I wanted to see come to fruition. And so by 2009, the band had a little bit of a break, and I was like, I'm going to self-publish this comic finally. I'm just going to get it done. And I didn't really have any contacts in the comic world, so I was all ready to self-publish. And I went on Twitter and I posted a video promoting it. And I started talking to this guy who was a writer of another comic book that I was a fan of. And
mm,
I traded some music for comics with him. And his name is Chris Ryle, and he's a great comic book author. And I didn't realize at the time that he was also the editor in chief of IDW Publishing.
okay.
And so by the time that I was ready to self-publish my book Wire Hangers, he was like, "Hey, you want to do it with IDW?" And I was like, "Are you kidding? Of course I would." My favorite comic at that time was 30 Days of Night, and
Mm,
that came out on IDW, so it was like, "Oh my god." And so ever since then, that was 2009. I just kept pitching them ideas, and I have several titles with them, including what I've been working on since 2016 is the Beauty of Horror adult coloring book series, which has sold over like 700,000 copies at this point.
yeah.
So it's just kind of really, it took off. There was really nothing like it at the time. All the adult coloring books were very nature based or mandalas, just basic designs. And I was like, what's up with all, the coloring books for horror fans? Like,
Yeah.
we need to
Yep.
get some red crayons going on here. And I just did it kind of as a spoof, as a parody of adult coloring. I was like, here's an adult coloring book for horror fans.
Yep.
And it found an audience, it's been super cool.
Nah, that's cool. Like you said, you've written so many graphic novels and your coloring book. How was it for you to able to incorporate your love for horror and art and just make this dream project?
It's been really great. It was also very challenging because I
Yeah.
had to kind of retrain myself to draw just like a single line weight. Like if you look at these adult coloring books, they're very intricate, but there's no shading.
Mm-hmm.
There's no heavy inking. There's nothing but lines, single lines to create depth and design. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a different way of thinking what's going to make a good coloring page. Um, and I've learned a lot from seeing people bring these pages to life with coloring.
Yeah.
And if you go on Instagram and you plug in the beauty of horror, you'll see thousands of pages of
Mm-hmm.
from all over the world, different colorists bringing all these pages to life. It's mind blowing, the talent out there. And people just love to kind of unplug for a while and
Yeah.
get creative. And
Yeah.
it's led me to team up with like Inside Editions and Warner Brothers to come out with Universal Monsters official coloring book, the official Beetlejuice coloring book. So I've been able to kind of like dip my toe into different properties and experience that too.
No, that's cool because, when I was at a young age, I was diagnosed with a sickle cell. So sometimes, whenever I go through, pain issues like that, I have to be admitted to the hospital. And I
Mm.
remember back in 2017, my kids would called me on the phone and said, "Dad, we got something special for you." I'm at the hospital at the time. "We got something for you, something special." I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, cool." And I remember they came into the room and they brought me some coloring pencils and they put down your coloring book. And I was
My
just like,
book?
yes. And
Oh
so I was
wow.
just like, I'm like, what is this? And then so they were just like, because you love horror, look, and then you can color, and take time and, relax and everything. And then that was the first time that I've seen your work, man. And I was just like so blown away because as a horror fan, I never had seen a coloring book like that before. And so it was kind of cool being able to do that, especially for a special gift from my kids, when I'm going through something really hard. So it definitely helped my time, go by a little bit faster in the hospital.
That's what it's all about. That's so
Yep.
awesome. I'm glad it helped you.
Yeah.
I wish I could color. I don't color that well, but
Uh,
I just like to draw them.
yeah.
Um, I'd love to see some of the stuff you colored.
Yeah, I definitely have to look into the book because that was a while back. So I'll definitely get the pages and then I'll send it to you, some pictures and stuff. So
Yeah, cool.
yeah. Um, so over a few years, doing PVD horror, when we first started off, we would help like a few film festivals, smaller budget things that happened. There was one that caught my eye was 60 Seconds of Horror that was back in South Carolina. They would do stuff for like animal shelters and stuff like that, all the proceeds. And we came across this stop motion animator called Trent Shy. And I had noticed like this cool stop motion little creature that he had created. And I was just like, man, that was cool. And then actually putting this all together, now going back and looking into it, that was actually Guliana from your work. And I was just
Yeah.
like, wow, like, what I mean, everything comes full circle. And how was it doing that, working with Trent?
Wow, that was some experience. First of all, Trent Chai is an amazing, amazing stop motion animator
Mm,
and sculptor, and he really does have his own style, and amazing, amazing guy. And when I hooked up with him back then, he was just kind of like making a name for himself. Now he's huge.
mm,
But I had a Christmas coloring book
yeah.
for the beauty of horror that I was looking to promote and make kind of like a little commercial for it. And I just wrote up like a little script and sent it to him, and he started to send me these characters as he was building for it. I had a good friend of mine, Jane Dashow, do a voiceover for it,
Mm,
and it just came together really, really well. And it the outcome was this little clip that just went viral.
yeah.
It's almost at like 8 million views now.
Hmm.
But it's very twisted too. It's like
Yeah.
there's like a clay Santa like chainsawing the reindeers. It's really out there,
Yep.
but it was a lot of fun.
That's cool. And then, like I said, over the years, and then now, how has it failed to have, Guliana as a NECA Toonie Toonie Terrors of Horror action figure, you know what I mean? So how does it
Yeah.
feel to have your own creation like that and then having a daughter, what I mean, at that age to be able to like hold something cool in her hand?
Well, I'm so grateful to Randy Falk and the NECA people
Mm,
for giving me that platform, and also including Guliana in the Toonie Terrors Series 7 line, which came out with some of the iconic, characters that I grew up on, like Killer Clowns from Outer Space,
yep.
They Live, and even Teen Wolf. So she was, seeing alongside all of those classic iconic characters is just mind blowing. And we're actually working on a brand new one that we're going to reveal soon. Another Guliana action figure, slightly larger, fully posable with real material dress, It's really, really something cool.
That's that's awesome. Now you have created journals. Now you have clothing. What is the main project that you really want to take this franchise a little bit more for yourself with this project?
Film,
Film?
film. Yeah,
Yeah.
we definitely behind the scenes. There's producers and writers that are on board to bring the beauty of horror to the big screen. And that's been it's a long process to make a movie, but it's definitely has made a lot of progress in the last year.
Mm,
Uh, since the writer's strike ended and all that held things up for a while. But I think we're back on track to really see that through the hopefully by the end of this year to finally announce something or maybe early next year.
that's cool. And like you brought up a little earlier, that you were able to create the official Warner Brothers Beetlejuice coloring book. What was it like bringing those pages to life of everyone's favorite, ghost with the most? How was that?
It was another big honor because that movie made such an impact on me as a little kid,
Hmm.
and to watch it with adult eyes again and really analyze it, to be able to bring those scenes into coloring pages was something cool. And I didn't realize all these years later, watching it again, that Michael Keaton doesn't really get seen until like an hour into the movie. He's got like 15 minutes of screen time,
Yeah.
but he's such an iconic character that that's what you remember. That's what all these years later.
Yeah. It's so crazy because it's like, they brought back the cartoon and everything, and then so releasing the sequel, which the coloring book released the same day as the sequel, right?
Yeah, that week, I think. Yeah.
No, okay, that was cool. So have you been able to go and see the sequel yet?
It was just my birthday the other day and October 2nd. And me and my family went to go see it finally, and we
Yeah.
got an empty theater. I mean,
Oh,
it
that's
could have been
cool.
like a private showing,
Yeah.
uh, but that was yeah. I finally got to see it. I like the second half more.
Yeah.
It took a while to get there, but
Yeah.
it was cool to see it.
That's cool. Yeah, my kids they loved it, being able to, create to watch Bob and everything like that.
Yeah,
Would Are there plans for you to create the sequel coloring book as well, or was that just like something for the first film?
we have been talking about it. In fact, when they first approached me to draw the book, it was going to have both films combined, but
Mm,
but eventually during the progress of that, they decided to just have me do the first film and save the second one for a later time. I think mostly because of the secrecy around the images and the
yeah.
characters. But I do have a funny Beetlejuice story for you, real quick.
Yeah.
When Life of Agony was recording our Broken Valley album for Sony in 2005, we we stayed in LA for about a month and recording out there. And one late night coming back to the apartment that we rented, we were at a red light and it was probably like 1 in the morning or something. And all of a sudden we get slammed from behind by
Oh,
another car. And we all got shook up and the rental car was smashed in.
oh man.
And the car was kind of like wrapped around our car. And we
Hmm.
got out and we noticed it was like a drunk driver. And he wanted to leave the scene. And we were like, we took his keys and called the police. He still wanted to go, and he's
Man.
slurring his words and this and that. It turns out it was the actor from Beetlejuice that played Otho.
Oh
The
man.
and so when the cops finally get there, like 45 minutes later, we're from New York, they saw our license and everything, and they told us to wait on the side of the street, and he's pleading his case. I'm not drunk and all this stuff.
Hmm.
And he's like, when they arrested him, you know, he's on the hood of the car, and he was like, "I was in Beetlejuice, god damn it."
So what? Like,
It's like, how is that relevant?
yeah,
You know,
it
but
probably
he's
worked for him for many years. You know what I mean? So,
but yeah, that was my Beetlejuice story.
oh man. Now, did you have to draw him in any of the coloring book scenes? Like,
I did.
yeah,
I
yeah. Now,
did.
how
Yeah.
was it? How was
You
that
know,
experience? Like, oh man, can we
I
skip
was
this
like,
guy?
this guy, the actor actually passed since
Yeah,
for a while, but
yeah,
um yeah, that's crazy.
yeah. Like I said, it's crazy how things come full circle. You know what I mean? So now you
Hmm.
can now when something happens, you go, I did the coloring book for Beetlejuice. Leave me
Yeah,
alone.
yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
I just did a signing in Salem, Massachusetts,
yeah,
over the weekend, and so many Beetlejuice fans out there.
yeah.
You know, I love going there. It's great.
Yeah, Salem's a great way to escape. I like to hit up like when it's less busy because the same thing happens year round. Like to just walk around and have we go down and kind of like talk with some of our friends and stuff down in the area. But it's cool. I also love when it's busy also too. But like you said, you've done a lot of conventions. Have you did any Comic Con conventions and stuff over
Yep,
the years?
I've done San Diego a few times. I do
Okay.
New York every year since I'm based here. So that's coming up pretty soon.
Yeah,
And
next weekend.
there's also a great one called Chiller Theater, which is in
Yep.
New Jersey, and there's always a lot of great guests there. A lot of uh, actors from horror movies that you can meet and stuff. And especially being on the other side of the table, um, it's cool to like just be in the elevator with some, like we ran into some actors from the movie The Thing,
Mm,
and The Fog, and they're just staying in the hotel that we're at. We're having breakfast with them. It's very it's like pinch me. It's like
yep.
when I was a little kid, I never thought I'd be able to, you know, rub shoulders with some of these people, and they're just normal people, just like us. So it's a really cool experience.
Yeah. Nah, that's cool. Now, you have done so many cool projects and worked with a lot of big names. Is there a franchise that you wish that you could add to your growing collection of coloring books?
Hmm. That's a good question. I'd love to do an official Shining coloring book. That would
Yeah.
be, I mean, I've seen that film probably 35 times,
Mm,
at least. So I know every shot, and I'm such a fan of it, of the property. And I've done my own homage pages to The Shining within the Beauty of Horror series, which has
yeah.
been cool. One thing about Beauty of Horror is that after that first book, which was uh more straightforward as far as like there's werewolves and vampires and zombies, and I kind of hit every subgenre of
Hmm.
horror in that first book. After that, I started to really focus on themes for each of the other books, and I'm up to book seven. Book
Yeah.
seven comes out next year. So I've done a lot of parody books, like Dead Celebrities was a
Hmm.
theme, um, horror movie spoofs, um, even turning famous artwork into horror parodies. So I've been able to touch upon a lot of the properties that I'm fans of,
Yeah.
and kind of give it my own twist and flavor to it. In fact, the new book that comes out February next year is Beauty Horror 7 Backwards Records, where I take classic album covers from all different genres and turn them into horror parodies.
Mm.
And that was really a lot of fun. I can't wait for people to start coloring those pages. It's really something special.
That's sick.
It
I can't wait for that.
it kind of mixes my two loves, music and horror.
Yeah.
Um, so it's cool.
Nah. Now, with your story and, having to, put everything together, you took time and said, you know what, I'm gonna try this music thing first, and then, I go back to art. What are some words of wisdom that you can give to, some artists that are kind of juggling, two different types of worlds to, you know, how did you like, what I mean, what some words of wisdom that you can give them to kind of make their life a little bit easier?
Um, don't quit your day job until you're absolutely ready.
Mm,
A lot of people think that, people, even in my position, that, are rocking big concerts and this and that, you know, it's important to hustle in a lot of different areas. The things that you love, would be preferable. But sometimes, I've worked regular jobs my whole life.
mm,
A lot of times those jobs gave me the freedom to do the touring and to, experience new things in art and take chances in art, where I didn't have to rely on a paycheck for the art,
mm,
um, to, really get creative. For instance, like, when I put out the first couple of comic book series, I was doing the music. I also had an internet job that I was able to have flexible time where I could do it from anywhere on the road, touring and stuff. So
mm,
like I didn't really care if like if the comic book was successful or not. I just wanted to put my best creative work out there. And if it found an audience, then great. If it didn't, I never followed trends in order to try and make a dollar. You know what I
mm.
mean? So like always stay true to yourself, your art, your creativity. Don't follow trends if you could avoid it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would say that that's the best advice I could give is, if you're always authentic, um, it will find an audience, I think, if
Mm,
there's some real talent there. And yeah, sometimes it takes years. You know, I've been trying to make a beauty horror film for many years now,
mm,
and it's it's gotten into hands of people that have been big time, and it's gone into independent producers' hands over the years. And I think it's about perseverance and belief in yourself, and having a vision
yeah.
for what things could be.
Hmm. I see. That's the same thing for me. For PVD horror, we started off basically just doing, a movie. Our main goal was to do a podcast, but we started off doing a movie nights, creating a community. So in Rhode Island, we have this big, following of people that come out and just enjoy watching movies with us. We've branched off and been able to do, the podcast and speak with a lot of, people that we grew up watching on the screen. And today, even bringing you on, and we also have beer collabs, and we also have a graphic novel comic book also. We have it's like a anthology, so we have a lot of cool local talent uh, artists that put their stories together. And for myself and my co-host Dave, we were able to create a story to bring it to life with some that touches on some of our favorite films. For me, it's like The Lost Boys and stuff like that. So like we're vampire hunters and stuff, and we're
Mm-hmm.
going against, back in our time, Mercy Brown. She's a big vampire, the first vampire that was in like kind of like Rhode Island. So it's
Uh,
like we're taking that story from The Lost Boys and then flipping it onto our own, upbringings of something that scared us for a long time. So
uh-huh.
after this, I would love to get your PO box or something so I can send you out our comic,
I'd
so
love
you
to
can
see it.
definitely
Yeah.
check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I didn't realize. So you're up in Rhode Island?
Yeah, we're in Rhode Island. So not
Uh,
too far away from Salem in New York, where you were just.
yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
we're looking at schools for my daughter. So,
oh, okay.
she's into art too. So we're looking at, Rhode Island School of Design and,
Yep.
things like that.
Yeah, that's definitely a cool school to check out. Top, for artists. So yeah, if you end up coming, Rhode Island's a great place to be. A lot of creative people. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So now, can you like you shared a little bit on the projects of that you have upcoming, but are some that already completed that you can share with the listeners that they'll definitely be able to look out for?
Yeah. Well, speaking of anthologies, I contributed to two big ones. Pantera put out a graphic novel with
Mm,
Z2 Comics, and I drew a cover for that. And also a story. I wrote and illustrated a short story based on one of their songs. So that's in there. And then also Typo Negative is putting out a Bloody Kisses graphic novel, which I did one of the covers for. and also contributed a story inside the book that I wrote and illustrated. I think that comes out December.
Okay, cool. Now, can you tell listeners where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, well, being that I have different handles for every platform, just go
Yeah,
to alanrobert.com and that will link you out to everything that I do. There's
nice.
books and music and all kinds of stuff on there.
All right. Alan, thank you so much for coming on the show. And for everyone listening, make sure you go out and complete your horror coloring book collection with all of Alan's great work. Definitely be on the lookout for everything he has going on. You don't want to miss this. We'll be back next week with another great episode. Until then, take it easy.